Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. Today's class is going to be on the next 5 chapters of Queen of Sorcery. So I hope you guys are enjoying the book so far. We are about halfway done with this particular book 2. But the next time we're done, we're going to be pretty far through it. I think there's only going to be a couple more classes, and then we'll be on to book 3. So hopefully you're enjoying it. Hopefully you are excited to see where we go from here. I'll admit that this set of chapters is a little bit harder for me to think about really in-depth things to talk about, since we do seem to be seeing a similar pattern of what's happening at this point, at least through book 2, where they're traveling and they're following Zeter, but the process of doing that, they usually have a new place that they go to and run into some problems, and they talk to the royalty for that section, and then they move on to the next section. So we do have some interesting things happening, but we have a lot of similar pattern for at least this section of the story as they're going along and they're trying to win support. So I did think up some good things to discuss today, but I will admit I had to dig a little deeper than I normally do. So hopefully you'll enjoy what I have to say. And of course, as always, if there is anything that I missed or anything that you think was important that I didn't talk about or overlooked or whatever else, of course you're welcome to let me know. And I will go ahead and have that discussion with you. I would love to hear your opinions and your thoughts and feelings as always, since of course I'm not perfect, as well as I don't pick up things that other people do pick up on, and that will help me learn better, and you as well, on the different things that we see and get from different stories. So of course, as always, let me know down below or anywhere else. Just go ahead and get a hold of me, and I'd be happy to have a discussion with you if there is something you'd like to talk about. Let's go ahead and start with our recap, as always. So we have the starting of this set of chapters with Neshach being killed. So the Murgo that was in charge of the rebellion is that Garion told the king about in front of him. He is killed right off, and we start off with that. And then we see this young lady trying to court Garion, much to his panic a little bit. He's not used to women being so forward with him. But luckily Pol ends up saving him and thinking up this insanity that he has in order to help steer her away from wanting him as a husband. And then we see Garion being forced to babysit Mandaralin with Nareen, and they have this very awkward moment of these two star-crossed lovers who can't be together having a conversation, at least with their eyes, that really makes Garion want to not be there ever. He's nice enough to stay and watch over them, though the question is, I don't know why the Lord would leave, or the Baron would leave his Baroness with Mandaralin in the first place, but oh well. Then they continue traveling and they go to Tolnadra. So we're slowly passing through a lot of different places. We're now in Tolnadra, which is where we have the part section where we were transferring to the next location. And on the road, they have this man who's gone crazy, and he charges at Garion. Garion whaps him on the head, not very hard, just tries to push him away. And something happens. He feels something happening with him, something interesting, and the guy is basically knocked out cold. Nobody really understands what happened, but Aunt Pol has him touch the man again, and he is revived and seems to be recovered. She decides to claim that she was working through Garion, but Garion is not sure that she is telling the truth because it didn't feel like that to him. So they continue on after that, continuing on their way, but they are apprehended and taken to see Count Draver. And apparently Draver was the one who called them. Unfortunately, when they get there, Count Draver cannot seem to remember why he called them there in the first place and why he would have them arrested and brought to him. So he asks his advisor, Yidis, to let him know why he would do so. And Eddings decides that he's going to take care of it. And by taking care of it, we realize that really Eddings is the one who made it. So they were brought to him and wants to lock them up and deliver them to his queen, Salmsra. Yeah, it's an interesting name. And they end up escaping and burning down the kitchen thanks to Silk's quick wit. He decides to burn down the kitchen on their way out as they escape, and they end up looking to visit the king of Tolnadra. So they visit Barak's cousin, who has ties to be able to get them in to see the king quickly. And that is where we left ourselves here. So we got pretty interesting things going on. Again, even though we have similar types of events happening, we do seem to be getting more complicated, more development as we go through each place. We see a lot of world building because we keep seeing new places and seeing what those places are like and the cultures and the people that live there are like. So it is still pretty interesting, and we still are slowly building things as us as readers are constantly finding out new things and seeing where we're going to be going. So we're taking a little bit of a slower route to get where we're going, but we definitely see the ramping up of everything happening step by step by step. And obviously we know that things, possibly not in this book, possibly in later books, because we still have 3 more to cover after this. But as we continue going, we're slowly building and building and building what we need to know, and this is a lot of the prep of what Pol and Belgariad really need in order to survive and to set up what's going to happen later. So we can definitely tell that it's a slow build, but we are reaching towards something and building upon ourselves, and we're becoming more complex as we go along. Okay, so the first thing that I'd like to discuss today is Garion. And of course, we keep coming back to Garion because even though we have so many characters in this story, Garion's the one that has to change the most. Yes, other characters are going to progress and are going to change and are going to be different as we continue forward, because all characters, you know, as they go through events, change or grow and become more complex as we learn more about them. As the audience, we perceive them as more complex. But Garion is the one that is the youngest. We saw him from book 1. He started out as a really little kid, and he is now in his teens at this point. And even though we have seen him grow already, he is continuing to grow and is much more malleable because he is a younger person and has a lot more growing up and changing to do than an adult who already has a lot more experience and a lot more events underneath their belt. Especially these adults who have already been, you know, on adventures, or Belgariad and Pol, who are thousands of years old. They've already had a lot of experiences and done a lot of changing already that we just haven't seen because it was done before their lives in the books that are being recorded. So Garion has a lot of growing to do, a lot of new developments, a lot of things that even the other characters don't know about him are going to be developing. And he's also somebody who's the kind of the focal point at this moment. So even though, like I said, we have tons of characters and a lot of them seem like they are really main important characters, we also know that Garion is the linchpin, as it were. He is the main character. He is the most important character because he is the one that is going to be able to interact with the orb and is going to have some kind of, at least we're assuming, and since we know from the author making it very clear that Garion is the person who's the next line in the Riven line to be able to be protecting the orb, that he is likely going to have to face Torak in some kind of way. So we do know that based on the clues and the things that the author has already given us, that it is likely that he is really the centerpiece and the focal piece. So he is being changed and molded so that he can become whatever he needs to be in order to do that battle or whatever interaction he's going to have with Torak. So we've got a couple things happening with Garion in this particular chapters, and we've kind of seen it being built up to this point that we are now seeing it. So obviously we aren't completely at the end point yet, but we do see several times where mysterious happenings or perceptions have been happening with Garion. So even though we haven't seen him really do any kind of magic, and Pol and Belgariad don't really sense that he should be doing any magic, at least not that we have been told as the audience. We don't have any perception of them thinking Garion's going to be able to do magic at all. But we see that these mysterious senses that he has, or these mysterious happenings that he's been involved with. So there's been several times throughout book 1 and book 2 that he has reached his senses out when Belgariad or when Pol is doing magic, and as such he can sense what is happening, or when they do magic he can feel it and sense that they're doing something. We obviously don't know if that is a unique ability or not, since the others characters, we don't know whether they have been able to sense it or if they even try to sense it at all. But we do know for sure that Garion has some kind of connection or some kind of perception with the magic that Pol and Belgariad do. And for example, when that one time he was reaching out to sense what Pol was doing, she had to tell him to stop because he was getting in the way of whatever she was going to do. So we do see that this sense or these kind of abilities are acknowledged by Pol, but she never really had any inkling, at least that she clued us into as the reader, or Garion into, that he could do magic. And when he talked to Belgariad about magic, Belgariad was like, I'm not sure if you can do magic, it's gonna be really up to you, and the fact that, you know, it's kind of an innate thing whether you can develop it or not. But in this case, these particular chapters, we really see that it is very possible that he can be doing magic, and the fact that when he whaps the guy on the head with his palm, he knocks the guy out, and we have that sense that something happened. Garion internally felt like something had happened that was not usual, and everyone just thought he whapped him really hard because he basically knocked him out with whatever this was, even though he only barely touched the guy. Not only that, but Pol has him get off his horse and fix whatever happened, tells him what he's supposed to do, and he feels that feeling again when he touches the guy in order to fix him. But Pol said that she was working through Garion, and Garion is pretty sure that that was not the case. He did not feel like she was working through him. He felt like whatever it was that was inside him was internally created. So at this point, we are not sure whether he actually is developing magic or if Pol was saying this actually what she was doing. But she seemed kind of, I don't want to say concerned, but she seemed very interested, seemed a little off, confused maybe by what happened with Garion. So she made up this thing, and it seemed fairly natural to everybody else. But Garion notices that there is a little bit of a look in her eyes that makes her think that makes him think, along with the feelings he's had, that she has made up some kind of lie in order to cover that he has done something she did not expect him to do. And something that he doesn't even know how he did. He wasn't trying to do anything other than protect himself. And we really do see, for Garion, a lot of growth in these chapters. We see more and more growth over this particular book. He's very matured a lot. He's really matured a lot. He's got very much more of a rapid progression going on for him right now. We really see everything that he has gone through has really made him grow up a bit. We don't know exactly how long it's been. We haven't had any mention of a birthday or any kind of way that they can say this is how much time has passed since he first started this journey. But we do know it's been several months at least, probably half a year, if not closer to a year. So we can definitely know that he's gone through a lot, and with everything that we've seen him go through, as well as the little bit of times that are lapsed by, that he is truly growing, and that growing is now expounding upon itself. We saw a lot of growth with how he treated Leldorin, like we talked about last time. And we can really see he's matured in the fact that he doesn't panic nearly as much, like the thing that happened with the man that he might have done magic on. He doesn't panic when the guy rushed him. He did smack the guy to try and defend himself, but he also didn't panic when the guy ended up being comatose or anything like that. Nothing that the old Garion or the less mature Garion would have done. Garion before was very sensitive to the things going on around him and panicked a lot more easily. We see that he's definitely is more in-depth thinking about things, really introspecting on things, and taking in what other people say and what other people do and how he feels about things and really absorbing it all. So I am pretty proud of Garion at this point for how much he has matured and grown. Of course he's not perfect, and of course he still has a long way to go, but we definitely see a progression from where we started to where he is now, and we can definitely tell that the things that he has problems with or the way that he reacts is very much a very different than he was before. So I definitely commend Garion and Eddings in the way he writes the maturity and the growth that Garion has been going through. Alright, let's go ahead and move on to our next topic, which is the complexity that this story and that this plot and that everything is growing. So we've gotten more players, more people involved, and that's really affected the complexity of this story and this plot and what's going on. And the reason I wanted to bring that up with this particular set of chapters is really because the Niceans are now involved. So we're constantly moving forward. And we do know, as well, like I mentioned earlier, we do have that similar progression of we keep, seeing the leaders of each world, or not each world, each country, getting them on their side, explaining what's happening, or the leaders reaching out to them and demanding to be seen because they need to talk about how the world is going on and all the problems that are happening because this orb has been stolen. Well, each new leadership, each new event, each new, thing that's being brought into the fold has made the story more complex, more figures running around, more things to look out for, more Murgos or more, bad guys, I guess you could say, being involved. And here we see that now another group that wasn't even really connected originally is being brought in. So the Niceans now are involving themselves and wanting to capture Garion, Belgariad, and the whole company because they now want to have a stake in what's happening at this moment. Now, if we go back to when we discussed the cover of the book, we do have, this queen here on the cover that we had talked about, saying that we weren't sure who that was. And she definitely looks pretty wild and is sitting on a snake throne. So it is very possible that this is in relationship to Selmrissa. It's unsure at this point if that is 100% certain, but it does seem like the Niceans have inserted themselves so far in this book, and it is likely that they are going to continue to insert themselves, so we might be seeing Selmrissa in this book. So as we add more players, especially more corrupt players, more pieces to our puzzle, or breaking it into bigger, smaller pieces to fit together because we've got more things happening, everything becomes more complex, more things to look out for the characters, more things to keep in mind as the reader, and everything becomes much more complicated, which is the same thing as complex, but I was trying to think of a different word. I had it and then it was gone, so sorry. But it just becomes a lot more to keep track of on both the characters' accounts and our accounts, which in turn makes the story even more interesting and makes it a little bit more spontaneous or less able to predict what's going to be going on and what's happening. We're going to see if Yadis ends up getting them or not, or if Selmarissa will somehow get them to visit her or not. Again, we have more things, more people at play, more things that could happen, more issues to have to correct, more danger to have to overcome. So we're adding more obstacles for our characters and more obstacles for us to have to watch out for. We still have Brill and Asherak on their trail. That continues to make the complexity of the story continue from what we had previously. It's not like those have just gone away. They still have to watch out for those people. They still have to take precautions and, try and work around them when they show up. And it's still very exhausting for them. So they are constantly having to look behind them at the people that they have already know about and are trying to evade and trying to throw off their tail. And now we have new ones as well. And of course, when we go into Tolhoneth, there are just Murgos everywhere. So we've added more problems upon more problems upon more problems in this set of chapters. We've had them be captured, we have them having to work around all the Murgos that are in the area, and we also now have to have them worry about the Niceans and what's going to happen with them if Yadis is really going to come after them to try and take them to his queen or not, if they're going to be able to move past quickly enough that he's not going to get them. We're going to see. Obviously, Yadis didn't seem, at least to me, like the kind of person that would just give up so easily, especially if, depending on how nice his queen is, his life might be on the line. Or there might be other players that are working for Selmarissa, and they might also be now looking for them as well. So we're going to see how everything comes together. The complexity continues to grow, and we are going to find out how this is going to affect the journey, how much it's going to set them back, or how much it's going to help them depending on the direction Eddings decides to take us. Alright, and next, let's talk about corruption. Now, I find this really interesting about this particular story, is that we started off back in the very beginning in a place that was pretty nice. It was doing well, it was prospering, didn't have a lot of, like homeless people or people killing and doing, unsavory things in order to have livelihoods or, just, resulting to crime. Not saying that all of Sindaria was perfect. We didn't see enough of it to know. But at least where Garion was a pretty good place. And the way that Durnik is and Pol, we kind of got a sense of the people that lived there. And it wasn't like a very bad place to be. And now obviously that would make sense that Garion and Pol would station, that Belgariad and Pol would station Garion in a place that is safe and away from a lot of that kind of stuff. But as we continue through book 1, it seemed like we didn't go any place that was overly bad. I don't want to say bad as in like, it's not a good place or anything like that, but just not overly full of like corrupt people. It seemed like they were pretty well-to-do kingdoms, places that, the culture was not the same as Sindaria, but kind of, similar, had some similarities to it. Obviously, none were the same, and people definitely had different views on different things, but for the most part, they seemed like decent, well-to-do areas that didn't, that handled things, all above board, that kind of stuff. But as we have entered book 2, we've slowly seen more of the culture and more of the people that are in these areas was being more corrupt or more sullied or whatever you want to say. We started off, with the serfs that were treated terribly and a rebellion of trying to kill their own king and stuff like that. And now in Tolnadra, we've reached a place where just madness apparently ensues, and that's okay. They talk about how the bribe is just how things happen in that area. We talk about how they talk about how murder and politics is basically the same thing, and that no one's going to arrest these people for killing other people just because of the political background behind it, and it just seems like we've really entered a shady place with a very shady culture, like very shady dealings of like how this world or this country interacts with its own people and what they believe is right versus wrong and all that kind of stuff. Not saying necessarily that it's a bad place to live. We haven't seen enough of it to say, or enough of the people to know what the people are like. But it definitely seems a lot shadier than Sandaria. And that corruption is basically the name of the game in this area. And it just seems like we've slowly progressed down the rabbit hole of being like more crazy things are happening, more corruption, and more of the things that we would, and at least in our culture, would say are the bad things to be doing and the immoral things to be doing is basically the way that the country works, and that's how people are, and it's not really bad. Nobody bats their eyes at it or looks twice. It's just the way the world works for them. And I think that's really interesting that we have made that progression further down and further down. And though we haven't seen tons and tons of it yet, I do think it'll be interesting to see how this affects Garion and his view of people and the world, how obviously it's really educated him, made him more of a worldly person because he has experienced these kind of places and these kind of people, but also how it's going to affect some of the other characters. We don't know exactly who's been where and what they believe per se on everything. Obviously Silk is very knowledgeable about these kind of places and how the dealings happen, so he's pretty familiar with it. But the other characters, especially like Dernick, who used to only be in Sandaria, might react differently, and they might make different choices based on their lack of experience with people like this or places like this, and we will have to see how that continues to grow from there. We also see, I mean, with Count Draver, the corruption that is happening there, and the fact that Yadis has done something, either made him sick, or it's the potions possibly that he's giving him that are making him like this. But he's not a strong ruler at all. He seems very out of it. Like we said, we seem like there is a little bit of a touch of showing us why that is, because Yadis is feeding him these potions and saying that he's working his way up to these different colored ones. So it's very possible that Yadis is being the shadow leader. It seems very, very clear at this point that he is the shadow leader for Count Draver, and he's kind of running the show, and Count Draver just thinks that he is in charge still. Or we don't totally know, maybe he doesn't care and Yadis can just do whatever he wants. We haven't really seen enough of that relationship to know, but obviously something is going on with that. So we really do see a lot of corruption, especially in this set of chapters with what we are dealing with, but just continually through book 2 we have slowly become more and more and more shady and corrupt, been to more shady and corrupt places. So I find that very interesting that we're doing that progression. I don't know if we're going to start seeing better places, or if maybe this is the act of the ore being stolen, or because, you know, the Zeder is trying to take it into more unsavory places where he can more easily get away with it. It's tough to say until we continue moving forward, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see where we end up. Okay, so those are all 3 of the main topics that I had for this set of chapters. Of course, please let me know, as always, if you feel that I missed anything. Like I said before, I felt like this was the main things that really came to mind when I was reading this section of chapters, but I also do know I had a little bit of a harder time really thinking about things that I felt like really stood out. I hope you liked what I did come up with, though, and what I really felt like we were headed with the story at this point. I do have 2 things for the Nitty Gritty. These are more just things that I think are interesting to keep in mind, or just kind of stood out for a second when I read it, being like, oh, that's an interesting thing. The first one is that Barak has a bearskin cloak. And I thought that was interesting. It like popped in my mind the second I read it. I don't remember reading that he had this before. I just noticed it when I read it, at least at this point. Maybe you guys caught that he had this already previously. But he did turn into a bear as his doom. We don't really totally know what that means as this moment yet either. He seems to have gotten over a lot of that drama he felt about it when it first happened. But that was what was kind of taking over him, was the bear creature or whatever. And he is wearing a bear skin cloak. Now, I don't know if that means anything. I don't know if that means anything to Brock, because obviously he wasn't sure what he turned into. But I did think it was an interesting addition that Eddings threw in that I thought just kind of sparked in my brain, like, oh, like, does that have meaning? Is that gonna come up later? Like, what does that exactly entail? So I thought that that was something worth noting, and we're gonna see if that does actually mean anything in the future. I would like to know if anybody else had that like spark of like when you read that, oh, kind of moment like I did. And then the second was that we have discovered a new thing about Silk, which is that he can somehow tighten and pinch his face to look like somebody else, to where all of his companions, or at least the companions that said something, couldn't tell that it was him. Now, obviously we don't know if, Belgariad or Pole have seen that before or anything, but everybody else seemed to be caught unawares that Silk could do that, and that was going to be Silk who sat down at their table originally. So I think that is very interesting. We're going to keep that in mind as well, and the fact that that could be a very handy skill that he might employ in the future. So yeah, that was everything for this class, this set of chapters. I hope that you enjoyed what I had to say on it and what I came up with. And of course, like I've said several times already in this video, you're probably like, please stop mentioning it, but I really would like to hear from you if you had any thoughts or any feelings about anything so far happening in these stories. For the next class, go ahead and read chapters 16 through 20, which for my edition of the book is going to be pages 176 through 230. And we will go ahead and cover those next time. As I said, we are getting pretty close to the end of the book. Let's see, 30. Yeah, we have maybe about a fourth after this next section. We'll only have maybe about a fourth left of the book, if that. Probably a little less, maybe a fifth. So we are moving right along, and hopefully you are enjoying it. For those of you who have not yet joined the Discord, if you would like to join, the link will be below. Go ahead and check it out down there. We would love to have you if you'd like to go ahead and chat with other people who have similar interests to you in fantasy fiction or anything else. We chat about all kinds of things on there. Go ahead and join us on the Discord. We do have several people who are on there and talking, chatting about different things, and we would love if you would join us. And if you're not sure if you want to talk or say much, that's fine too. You're welcome to still join the server, see what people are saying and what we're talking about, and just jump in whenever you'd like to. It's not mandatory for you to interact at all. If you'd just like to go ahead and see what's happening on there, we would still love to see you at the Fantasy Fiction Fanatics server. And like I said, the link is down below in the description box if you want to go ahead and join. If you decide later that you'd like to join, you can also go to my website and click on the Discord button at the top. That will also lead you to a link that will lead you to the server. You can go ahead and reach me for any comments, questions, or concerns down below in the comment box, or you're also welcome to reach me on Twitter, which is going to be at FantasyFiction1. Or you're also welcome to contact me on Facebook, which is /FantasyFiction1. You can go ahead and check out any of my other content that you might like to see, book reviews, book suggestions, movie suggestions, topics about fantasy fiction in general, or anything else over on my blog, which is www.fantasyfictionfanatics.net. So anything else that you might want to see is on there, and you can also contact me there as well. Or you can also reach me by email, and the email will be in the description box below. However you want to get a hold of me, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you and to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much for tuning in today's class. We do have a trivia question now on the website as well. So if you want to play that, that would be amazing. I would love to hear your answers on there. And on the next class, since this is going to be a midweek video, an extra one that I was able to put out for you, I will go ahead and let everybody know who got the answers correct on the trivia on the next video, which is going to be on the weekend. So there is a full week for people to answer before I say what it is and put out the next question. So you still have time to answer that question if you would like to do so. It's going to be on the right hand side. You might have to scroll down just a little bit and you'll see the question right there. Right now it is a question based off a picture, so once you see the picture you'll know that you found it. If you're on mobile, at least on the phone, I'm not sure on the iPad, you'll have to scroll all the way down to the bottom practically in order to see the question. So I hope that you have fun and will play a game with me on that. And yeah, I guess I will talk to you guys next time. Bye!